Days of Our Lives is in 7th place in my soap opera rankings for January 2022, making it so that all 4 American soap operas are back at the very bottom of my rankings. And it's why I've been talking about the possibility of just taking a break from them or just watching them very little and just putting them all tied at last place in my rankings, because I don't see anything good changing. Days of Our Lives is the one soap opera keeping me hanging on to the American soap operas because my favorite couple's going to be returning. But the thought of Ron writing for them makes me not want to watch it because I don't really know if I want to watch Ron writing for Bo and Hope. But let's talk about the main story. It kind of started where Eric had this plot to kidnap Kristen's child and kidnap Rachel. Really, just Eric and Sloane were with Rachel. Rachel seemed to have a nice time, especially with Sloane at times. This was a way for Brady to try and get Kristen to take him to the orchid, and she does, but it's missing, and it seems somebody may have stolen. Because it's missing, Kate takes a turn for the worse and dies. Kate dies first, and then Kayla takes a turn for the worst and dies as well. And lastly, we get 2 weeks of Marlena dying, a pretty nice tribute to Marlena, and then Marlena dies as well. Now, I see plenty of fans complaining that as characters, Kate and Kayla didn't get enough of hoopla surrounding their deaths. And on one hand, I can agree with that. Now, Marlena has been, arguably the main character of Days for a very, very long time now. Decades and decades. So I kind of get it that Marlena gets the big hoopla surrounding her death. And it does seem to be more of a Marlena story than certainly Kayla or Kate's. But on the other hand, I will say that facts are facts. And for some reason, this show doesn't really always respect Steve and Kayla as a couple, when the fact is that the highest rated episode in Days of Our Lives history was not a John and Marlena wedding. It was not a Roman and Marlena wedding. It was a Steve and Kayla wedding. So I don't really understand why sometimes I do feel like that couple doesn't get the respect it deserves when it clearly had a major fan base once upon a time. But that's not to say that Marlena doesn't deserve all the hoopla, because Marlena is kind of the main character of Days. But, you could chalk it up to basically everything else on these American soap operas. It gets chalked up to bad writing out of Ron here, that he doesn't really take the time with Kate and Kayla. And it's more of a Marlena story anyway, because when Marlena gets to heaven, she runs into Susan there, who's showing her around heaven, and then we see the devil eyes, and I guess they're connecting the story to the devil, and I don't know how I feel about that, because if anybody's watched my videos over the past year and a half, I hated the Possession 2.0 very, very much. So, on one hand, while I can appreciate the twist, and it's a good twist, I guess, at face value, it's a good twist, I don't want it to be dragged out, because I'm totally sick of the devil story on this show. Sick of it. So hopefully this is it needs to be done by the end of February sweeps, to say the least, because nobody wants it. Nobody wants it tied to the devil story, but I guess at least it's different. And while I'm sick of the outlandish stories on this show because they're not good, and they're not good because Ron makes them way too campy with no seriousness whatsoever, I'll give it a slight chance, but I'm not looking forward to it. I'll say that much. I also saw people complaining about Steve attacking Kristen because she's a woman. I mean, this was mostly just on Twitter, because, Twitter, everybody on Twitter always has to act like they are so morally superior. How dare Steve attack the woman who might be responsible for his wife's death? Give me a break. I care about Kristen. Kristen's been written as a cartoon character for years now, so it's hard to even take her like she's a real person, so Steve attacking her makes plenty of sense to me. And Steve's always had some anger issues, so On one hand, I can see maybe Steve should get in trouble, but then on the other hand, the only reason Kristen is out of prison in the first place was some awful convoluted plot by the governor to be blackmailed into letting out all of these villains out of prison. Ugh. Speaking of prison, though, I did like that we at least got to see Lucas in prison and that he's not just off the show. And Orpheus was in there with him, and Orpheus trying to give him some whiskey. Lucas kind of not drinking the whiskey and having a good conversation with Rex, which I enjoyed. I wish more of Lucas's real siblings were around, though. The story that came out of Kayla's death was Alex turning off Stephanie's phone when Chad was trying to get a hold of her, that Kayla was dying, so Stephanie didn't get to the hospital on time before Kayla died, so that causes all this tension between Stephanie and Alex. I don't know what I'm supposed to root for in this story. Am I supposed to feel bad for Alex? Because I don't. I kind of feel bad for Stephanie, obviously, because her mother died, but at the same time, it's Days, and it's hard to actually care about any of these deaths because everyone on Days dies but isn't really dead. So the stakes aren't even high when a character dies, because this happened way before Ron, but Ron definitely, of course, in Ron fashion, he beats it into the ground, and he has to have 3 characters die at once but aren't really dead, possibly. It's too much. It's way too much. The best thing to come out of these deaths, really the only thing I enjoyed out of these deaths, was actually Drake Hogestyn getting a chance to do some great acting. I feel like Drake gets a bad rep for not being a good actor, and at times I can see it, but Drake has always gotten by on his charisma. But I think Drake kills it in melodramatic soap opera scenes with Marlena, and he did it again this time. So I really enjoyed Drake's acting with Marlena's death, but not really death. Now, most of these other stories I just don't care about. Xander, I'm sick of Xander getting off, and nobody wants to turn Xander in. I don't care that Leo and Sonny's friendship might be ruined because Will found out the truth about Leo acting like the clown to get Xander off. Good riddance to that possible friendship. I didn't like it in the first place. But one thing I am enjoying, and hopefully Days continues to get this right, is that they're teasing Johnny and Chanel together again, and those two have great chemistry, and I really enjoy them together. It helps that Chanel and Allie have become so boring, and I don't think the show knows what to do with them. I don't like the fact that it was kind of just another lesbian story on American soap operas, that they only got drama out of men being involved in those stories. But Johnny and Chanel is the right way to go. Tripp is back too because Kayla died, and I do like Tripp and Wendy together. I think those two have chemistry as well. I do want Joey to stick around as well. I feel like they're getting a good younger set right now where they can have a lot of interloping couples. There's a lot of story possibly between all of these young characters, and I hope they take the time to get into them and don't rush through it again like they did the first time, or ruin it with a possession story like they did the first time. That's about it. I see a lot of praise that the Days of Our Lives episodes are getting longer because they're on Peacock, and I'm like, you really want longer episodes of the show? Really? With this writing? I could see if the writing was better, we got longer episodes, and we do get some longer scenes that I would appreciate more if the writing was better, but it's not. And Days is also one of the lowest soap operas with the rest of the American soap operas, but it does have the most potential out of the 4 American soap operas, and it is the one American soap opera keeping me from taking a 4 to 6 month long break from watching any of them.